The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed during this or any broadcast belong solely to our guests or our hosts. These broadcasts do not represent or reflect the views of their employers, sponsors, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome to the Flipboard EDU podcast with your host, William Jeffrey, where we collaborate, communicate, and educate with the greatest educators in the world on Flipboard. Let's start the show.
Welcome back, Flipboard fam. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffrey, and as we look forward to the new school year with enthusiasm and fresh hope of returning to normal schooling, we will need even more leadership from our school leaders. Students, teachers, and parents faced an unprecedented shift in education last year, which we'll know, undoubtedly over the next couple of years. We will have to call upon leadership for guidance in areas of social and emotional intelligence and mental health fitness in the post-COVID-19 era. Vernon Wright has made a tremendous impact on education and leadership development. He is a motivational speaker, life coach, author, educational consultant, and entrepreneur. In this episode, we speak to Vernon about his journey into school and district leadership, why he is passionate about education leadership, and his success model, which he describes as believe, study, hustle, manifest, repeat. We also speak about the chapter he wrote for the book 100 No-Nonsense Things That All Teachers Should Stop Doing. So, like we always do about this time, let's collaborate, communicate, and educate with the best educators in the world right here on Flipboard EDU Podcast.
Welcome back, Flipboard fam. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffrey, and I have another amazing guest here tonight, Mr. Vernon Wright. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. It is my privilege, my honor, my pleasure to be around you and in your thought space and in your circle. Not only that, but the thought spaces and circles of your audience as well. I definitely think that I get cool points for being around you all.
Hey, man, we sure appreciate it. Let's go ahead and go with the first question. Before we get started, let me just say that you have been an open book because you've been on so many different people's shows. You shared your story with so many educators. Just give us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, not a problem at all. I'm so happy to do it. What a privilege. What an honor. Bachelor's degree is in economics and finance. I went into the corporate world, did that for a little while. Got to a certain point where they said, hey, Vernon, if you want to go to the next level career-wise, you probably need to go ahead and get an MBA. They were very cool about it. I just didn't know that I was really all that jazzed about getting an MBA at that point in my career. I decided to go ahead and do, as one of my mentors says, I decided to do a pivot, folks. I left business and went into education, and I laughed because my plan in education was just to go ahead and teach long enough to meet what is called down here in Texas, of course, is the way the Texas system works, the rule of 80. Okay, so years plus age equal 80. You get a pension and you can go on and do whatever you want to do with the rest of your life. That was really the plan, and got down into where I was. And I had some people start coming to me saying, hey, you need to get into leadership. I was like, no, thank you. They were like, no, like really, for real, seriously, you need to get into leadership. Long story short, I surrendered. When I say surrendered, I tell in a bad way. That's in a really good way. I surrendered to the call that God put on my life. I have had so many different opportunities at different levels that has brought me here with you all today.
Excellent. Excellent. Your story was filled with, I've been following you, of course, on social media. I follow you through just like different friends that we have, mutual friends. I don't think you knew that I was friends with the people who you were friends with, but we had just mutual connections online. Dr. Sarah Thomas is one. I'm going to call George Kuros my friend. He may not be big enough to be in his circle. Those who have been with those people and on their shows, and just very Dr. Dan Cranes for the leadership of learning, people who I admire. Why are you so passionate about leadership?
Yeah, I would tell you this, and it's such a loaded question because I could go on and on for hours. I know we don't have that much time. But I'm passionate about people. One of the things that I have found out and I've realized over the years is when great things happen in business, when they happen professionally, when they happen personally, it's when people come together. And leadership for me is not maybe the way most people would think about leadership, which is very nuts and bolts, very, as one of my colleagues used to say way back in the day, very prescriptive. I think it's about people. And when people come together and they make authentic connection and they have some hustle with them and they have belief in what they're trying to do, great things can happen. Typically, I will tell you from the other perspective and from a different angle of having been a consultant, a speaker, a life coach, leader at the district level, what have you, right? Supporting campuses at the district level. What I found is when organizations are dysfunctional, typically somewhere in there, once we start peeling the layers back, there's some issues with trust. And wherever there are issues with trust, that means that there's some connections that people, for whatever the reasons are, they don't believe are authentic.
I just listening to your talks. I'm going to get to the hustle part. I should probably go there next, but I do want to make sure that we talk about the book and the chapter 93 that you wrote. Let me get to that question. You co-authored a book and you wrote a chapter in the book. I don't have the book, although I'm going to get it. It is 317 pages, by mistake.
It's a little bit depending upon whether you're looking at the copy in the physical version or at some point, whenever it comes out. I think eventually it will, that book and the whole series, whenever it comes out on Kindle. I think there's a difference between kind of the number of pages in Kindle and the number of pages with the physical book. But the physical book, yeah, it's a little bit, but I will tell you this, that it's entertaining.
It's 100, if I'm not mistaken, 100 different authors all got together.
103 different authors. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's very interesting. And it's a huge project. And I just want to throw a quick shout out to Rick and Rebecca, two great individuals. I will tell you especially about Rick. Rick has been very upfront about his story, from being like literally almost at the very bottom to now being in a place that is a really cool place. His story, his testimony, his background, I tell people check into it. He's written some books and has spoken about it, but what a great inspiration. And for me, so honored and privileged to be a part.
Excellent. So the name of the book for those people who are listening is 100 no-nonsense things that all teachers should stop doing. Your chapter is chapter 93. What is your chapter about?
Yeah, what my chapter is about administrators not being motivated to pursue administrative positions and leadership positions by money. Because this project started, a lot of people I know now are saying, hey, it's April, May, June. They're talking about this book and so forth and so on. But one of the things that people may not necessarily know behind the scenes is this project really started like late summer, early fall of 2020. When we started the project, there was a list of subjects and titles. Rick just kind of gave them to us. Rick said, hey, here's a spreadsheet. I'm going to let you guys go ahead and pick whatever you feel most aligns with your experiences and where you've been and what your calling is. That's the one that I picked because I said, this is what I want to talk about. This is what I want to speak about. But I will tell you though, behind the scenes, and I won't say which other chapters there were, because I don't want to infringe on anyone else's work. But there were a few chapters I had to narrow down to, and there were some competing ones there. But I decided and went with 90.
And I don't definitely want to speed through this interview, but in your other interviews, you were talking about you sound like you're a man of faith, and I'm a man of faith. I know the Spirit by the Spirit. So when we're talking about leadership and we're talking about things that are put inside of you before the beginning of time that you were supposed to put in this generation while you're here, some people experience imposter syndrome. That's a real adversity for most people to get started on their dreams. Why is your moniker of believe, study, hustle, manifest, and repeat important?
Yeah, it's important because it represents the whole cycle. Let me say that one more time. It's important because it represents the whole cycle of what, Vernon? It represents the whole cycle of moving from a belief in something, a concept, an idea, a dream, a hope, a desire, all the way to the point of saying, I finally achieved this. It's real. It's come to fruition. What next? Okay. So what I tell people is that individually, but also to collectively, once you start doing really great things, people start to see those things. In other words, there's an outward manifestation. Okay. It's outwardly seen. One of the things that people are going to do is they're going to start asking you, how'd you do that? For individuals, sometimes we typically see that with weight loss. We see that maybe with somebody changes their style or their appearance, or they change something like that. When we start talking collectively, in a collective sense, we start talking about people that turn schools around from low performing to high performing. They even turn them around to not just high performing, they turn them around to model schools. Typically, I will tell you that when we see stuff like that at a campus level and then at a district level, one of the things we start asking is, what did you do? How did you do that? How did you get people on board? Whatever that process is, can we replicate that at other schools? Can we replicate that across the district? Can we replicate that to other districts? Believe, study, hustle, manifest, repeat comes directly from the Bible. And people may not necessarily know that, but it comes directly from the Bible. So believe, what do you believe? Study to show yourself approved. That's 2 Timothy 2:15. Hustle, because if you don't work, you shouldn't eat. Okay. All right. We won't even go into that one. But, and of course, we're not talking about people that have certain situations or special situations. We honor that and respect that. Those different situations and those different things lead us into believe, study, and hustle. But if you believe, you study, and you hustle, what should come next? We should see some manifestation. So in other words, I'm working and I'm doing all this stuff and I'm hustling and so forth and so on. Then what should happen? You should manifest. And so once we manifest, and then we have whatever the end result is that we've been waiting for and we've been believing in and we've been hustling to try to get, what we should then do is not say, oh, okay, we got that. That was really cool. All right, now time to go ahead and get on cruise control. I mentioned this on George's podcast. I had let myself get on cruise control. So then once we finish that, the next question to ask is, which is the repeat part, the next question to ask is, what's next for me to conquer? What's next for me to help someone out with? What's next for me to collaborate with someone on? What is next for me? Because our lives that are intended to go ahead and help others. I'll just say this real quick. I'm saying it unabashedly. Unabashedly, I say this. And a great place to take notes, folks, if you're taking notes, so you don't come into any space where coach is and not be ready to take notes. That already, folks. All right. But I have dedicated my life. Absolutely. I've dedicated my life to helping other people elevate.
Yeah. One of my unsung passions is to study a seed. And I was in a very bad job. I shouldn't say a bad job. It was the best job I ever had, making the most money I ever had. And I had a leader who did not believe in me. And her and their leadership did not believe in me. I was in a place where I had to produce. I just happened to run across a sermon. This particular man was talking about the parable of a seed. Inside of every seed is a forest. How does that? Yeah, the crazy part about it is, so when you were speaking, man, like all that just re-popped up into my spirit. It was in my spirit. So anyway, so basically to explain that for those of you who are listening is that everything that a tree needs is inside of a seed. And the seed is put in the right environment and given the things that it needs, it's going to blossom into plant. That plant is going to grow into a tree. As long as it's in the right environment, it will produce fruit. The more fruitful it is, the more seeds it will produce in the people. In that job, what I realized was I was concerned with not being fruitful. So when I focused on becoming very fruitful in that job, it opened up a whole bunch of other doors for my fruit to go and spread as far as. And I always tell people who I mentor is that I need you to mentor 3 other people. When they become a leader, then that's what validates me as being a mentor to you. I know mentorship is a big thing to you. And so I just agree with you on your outlook on those things.
Oh, thank you so much. I will say that as you were sharing, a couple of mentors of mine have always said this for years, and they've said it simply like this, saying what you're saying, but saying it a little bit differently. They simply have said it this way. Another great place to take notes in addition to what you shared, quote unquote, the seed knows its job. Let me say that again. The seed knows its job. So then if we're not getting the harvest, the question is, first of all, have you planted it? And then what genetic potential is within that seed? So if there's potential within that seed, which it is, that's why it's a seed. And then if we plant it into the ground that it needs to be planted into, then all we have to do is just make sure that the soil is right and that the watering is right. And we just let the seed do what it's programmed to do, and that's produce a harvest. And I'll say something else that is also too out of the greatest selling book of all time. People will catch that one. But it always says this, as long as there is sunrise and sunset, okay, as long as there are the seasons on this, there will also too be what? Seed
Time
and harvest.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I feel that, but listening to the podcast with George, and you were talking about you worked in a Title I school, and then you also talked about how the believe, study, hustle, and then the manifest as what. But the crazy thing about people, especially children, is in that same category, is if you put the child in the right environment and you give them what they need in that environment, the amount of fruit that they're going to produce is going to be so much so that they will yield a far. But on top of that is if when you are an educator who can put people in the right environment, then kings will come to you and try to get your fruit. That's what's crazy about this situation is that you never really see, and you have never seen an apple tree run up to give you an apple. When there are some apples that you like to eat, you always go to that apple tree. And so it's the same thing with this moniker. If you are a gardener and a tender of people, then greatness will come to you simply because you're just following a simple rule. And I just like to share. That's what I'm passionate about simply is looking at that.
The Bible also said that it asked this question, do you see a man skilled in his work?
Yes.
He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. And that's Proverbs 22:29 for those that are wondering where that reference is or where to go find that and look at that. But I will say this, and certainly this is not a theologian class or theologian course at seminary, because certainly I don't pretend to be a theologian. But I will say this, though, is one of my mentors says, I can read. I know that if it says, I challenge people to do this, even if you don't necessarily say, Vernon, I'm not necessarily quote unquote religious. I just want you to go ahead and look at that and check out the versions. Check out the King James, check out the New International, check out the CEV, check out the Amplified, check out the different versions of it. I want you to just see what that actually says. And then something else to do, something else to think about, folks, is really this. The things that are written about in the Bible, have they actually happened, or is it just theory? I think we both know the answer to that.
This is not a theologian class. And of course, you can use any book for reference. And we are in an unprecedented time currently right here in America. I'm just going to be honest with you. We are starting school after a pandemic. And whatever literature you use for inspiration, we're just sharing what inspires us. Of course, there are just many different books that people use, but these are our favorites. And one of our favorite quotes and some of our favorite stories. You remember some of the things that inspires you. Like some people like to watch movies and they remember movie quotes. And those are the things that inspire them when the times get tough. And some people like songs, and some songs inspire you. That's the way I look at it. But mindset, us coming in post-COVID, why is it important for you to inspire other educators?
Yeah, because I'm going to tell you this. You can get so busy. We can get so busy. Collectively, we can be so busy about doing the business of teaching that we forget. So busy about doing the business of leading schools that we forget. So busy about doing the business of leading districts. So busy about doing whatever it is that we do in education that we forget. What do we forget, Vernon? We forget that, you know what? Each one of us is called to do something really big. Now, here's the thing to think about and the thing to realize, folks. My story is my story. My calling is my calling. Now, it doesn't mean that my calling is Coach's calling. So Coach may have a different calling, and it doesn't mean that I'm supposed to go over and try to do exactly what Coach did, because if I try to do that, it might not work. And here's the reason why it might not work. That's for Coach, not for me. But see, if Coach pursues and goes after what is for him, and then I go ahead and I go after what is for me, then guess what happens is we're both trying to do what? We're both trying to make an impact. And when I coach people, whether it's an organization, whether it's an individual, what I tell them is when we talk about quote unquote making an impact, what we're really talking about is adding value. But I want you to think about something. How can people add value and make an impact if nobody reminds them and inspires them and keeps it at the forefront of their thinking that, you know what, you're great, you're awesome, this is in you. Have you stopped to think about this lately? Have you stopped to go ahead and think about what if I don't get clear about what I'm called to do? I'll just be sitting up here 20 years from now with these same people doing this same stuff and not have gone anywhere and ask myself, why haven't you made any progress?
Man, that is so deep. I'm going to go back to we are post-COVID, and there are, I think I saw a statistic, 45% of current principals said that if they could retire and never come back to education, they would. They just leave. And so there is a lot of stress on teachers, on administrators, on district level personnel who now have went through a life-altering event. We have students who lost parents. We've had teachers who've lost husbands and wives. We've had district administrators who's lost parents. So many people have lost. So now we're coming back into a situation where you at first probably had a passion, or you probably may have been losing a passion. So now you have to come back and lead people. Now in you leading people, what is going to inspire those people to sit and listen to you?
Yeah, the number one thing I tell people is this: it doesn't matter how much stuff, it doesn't matter how many degrees you have, it doesn't matter how much alphabet soup you have after your name. I'm not against those things. I have some alphabet soup after my name as well. But I often tell people this: the number one thing is make an authentic connection. Make an authentic connection, folks. And we just presume that everybody knows how to make an authentic connection, but not everybody has that skill. What we have to do is we have to sit down and we have to have these conversations with people and engage them in it and ask, hey, what does it mean to make an authentic connection to you? What does that mean? Tell me what that looks like. Going back into when I got into coaching teachers many moons ago. And one of the things we would always ask and use as a lead-in with teachers is, what does that look like? What does that sound like? What are you doing? What are the students doing? Talk to me about what you all are doing and how you're interacting together. And then we would just let the teachers go with that and describe that scene. But also too, at the same time, we have to go ahead and think about, how does that authentic connection get made? How do we do that? And if a person doesn't know how to do that, we start to give them tools. And I will say this real quick. There are 3 questions that obviously I've shared quite a few different times with people in different spaces. And I'll share one of them here real quick because I know that we have some time constraints. We need to go do something else. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll share one of those questions right now. But you say, Vernon, I want to get all of the information. I want to get all of it. I'll tell you how you can get the rest of it here in a second. But one of the questions I ask people to lead in with simply is this: walk up to someone and ask them, right now, this second, what are you absolutely passionate about? Just right now, this second. I challenge people, right? I've talked to people at the undergraduate level that are college students. I've talked to people in so many different spaces in education, outside of education. And that's one of the 3 questions that I've shared with them is, and I've asked them, I said, you know what? Walk up to somebody today, somebody that you know, and ask them, hey, right now, this second, I'm curious. What are you absolutely passionate about that you're working on? And just be quiet. I said, now at first, when you walk up to them and you ask them that, I said, they're probably going to turn and look at you and be like, is this a joke? Is this one of those prank shows where you're pranking me, you're punking me or whatever? I said, you assure them, no, you're not. And no, you're not pranking them. It's not a joke, like you're serious, but you want to know, right? What are you most passionate about? I will tell you my own experience over the years of having shared this with so many different people in so many different spaces. A lot of people have said to me over the years, Vernon, you're the first person to ask me that. I think that's cool, right? That, hey, man, I was the first person to ask someone this. But at the same time, too, if I flip that around and I look at that from the other perspective, what I often ask myself is, like, why is that? Why has no one asked that before me in these different spaces that I've been in? So something to really think about. Now, if you would say, man, Vernon, that's great. Love that question. Right now, this second, what are you absolutely passionate about that you're working on? How can I get access to more pro tips? How can I get that? What I would say is simply go to shapetherightvision.com. Now, Shape, SHAPE, the Wright, WRIGHT, and then Vision, VISION.com, shapetherightvision.com. When you go there, you sign up for the email list, and it's going to take you right to the audio. Free of charge, no charge to you, doesn't cost anything. But I will tell you that once you go to that audio and you listen to it, and it's a fairly short audio, but when you go to and you listen to it and you think about all of the information that's in there, because it's compact, it's dense, it's a short amount of time, but it's a lot of information. You're going to say, you know what, Vernon, this is on them. I don't say that to brag on me. I give credit to God, and I thank God for that, because God's my source.
Hey, man, I think this goes back to our analogy of putting the seed in the right environment. And sometimes you have to wake people up so that they'll know that they're not wasting time. I am a firm believer is that everything we see has a purpose. There's nothing that doesn't have a purpose. And if you are not in the right environment, then you're wasting your time. And so we need people like you to come and ask those very pointed questions. Hey, what are you passionate about? What are you working on right now? And if they are working on something that they are in the right environment with, and they're growing, then that's great. But sometimes people need that wake-up call. And so as I transition, the zero apology zone, tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Love this question. I get asked this all the time. And simply I say this, zeroapologyzone.com is the branding foundation of all that we do as a group collectively. And obviously I'm a large part of that and the founder of that movement. And so what that becomes and what that is that is an outward symbol. That is an outward sign of all that we stand for. And simply, I say it this way, we're a voice for those without a voice. We're a voice for those with a voice, but those that are afraid to speak. And we advocate for all of those folks unabashedly and with zero apologies. And the foundation, the core of the brand is, you guessed it, believe, study, hustle, manifest, repeat.
I agree with that. I love that. I know that you guys do a lot of good work. And if you could go back in time and let me not use the go back in time. What advice can you give a new educator about your journey as an educator from where you started versus where you are today?
Yeah, I'm working on a book right now. And one of the things that I will say is I was working on doing some writing earlier today. And one of the things that I was talking about, and of course, I'm not going to go ahead and share all of it, but I'll give a little tidbit, a little hint, is really just talking about your vision and understanding that whatever your vision is, you need to take whatever that is and then just go so much bigger than that and understand that you have a vision and then there's a vision larger than your vision. And we need to stop and we need to ask ourselves, hey, my vision, is it taking into account whatever the larger vision is? And if it's not, which typically it's not, then what do we need to do for our own thinking? We need to stretch that. We need to go beyond. And one of the things I'll throw in as another little pro tip for your listeners and for your audience is simply this. Ask yourself, who am I reaching? How can I reach more people? How can I have more of an impact? And of course, what does impact mean? Having an impact or making an impact means adding value. And so the more people I can reach, that's the more people I can add value to. That's the more impact that I can make. And simply, that is what we would say is the word scale, SCALE. So I would recommend that. And I would say that to a new educator. And then the other thing that I would say to a new educator really is this: always be seeking understanding and clarity. Let me say that one again. Always be seeking understanding and clarity. And then once you get understanding and clarity, understand that your belief and your faith will take you so far down the road and will take you much further than you ever thought. But what does it start with? It goes back to what you have said multiple times in this podcast. And I personally have been blessed by it. And I know the listeners have as well. It really goes back to really that analogy, that metaphor of planting a seed. And so then once you plant the seed, then what happens over time is you're consistent in working that process. What's happening? The seed is growing. The seed is growing. The seed is growing. And then guess what happens? You start to see the seed grow. you start to see the after effects, the byproducts. You start to see the outward signs of the seed growing. Now, that's not when the seed started growing. The seed was growing well before our natural eyes could go ahead and see that growth. But once we're able to see that growth, that's an outward sign that tells us what we're on the right path, we're doing the right thing. And I would encourage educators to really look at those two things. I would encourage them to look at their vision, and I would encourage them to go ahead and think about the process of how a seed grows. And you're absolutely right. A seed needs to be what? It needs to be in the right environment. And a seed needs to have that TLC. It needs to have the right soil. It needs to have the right water. It needs to have the right weather. And it needs that consistently. So if it gets that consistently, what should happen? The seed should do what? The seed should produce, or the seed should manifest. So if you say, you know what, Vernon, man, wow, that sounds good. That's great. Man, I need like a template that I can go through with the different steps to find out the different things. I'm going to say it one more time, folks. If you're taking notes, great place to take notes. Okay, is go to shapetherightvision.com. And when you go there, you'll find the audio 10 steps to becoming a game changer. I don't make any money off of that. That's free. It's there on the website. And that was really born out of so many different people in so many different spaces, coaching individuals and organizations, people saying, you know what, Vernon, I need some tips on what do I do? I need a structure. I need a plan. And one day I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and package this. And I did. And so that is 10 steps to becoming a game changer. Go to shapetherightvision.com, get that, download it, listen to it. It's a short listen. It's not that long, but I am telling you, I don't want to say I'm 100% sure and guarantee, but let me say I'm a little short of guaranteeing that you're probably going to listen to that more than once. And you're probably going to say, you know what, this is good stuff. So I want people to be blessed by that. I really do want them to be enriched by it.
Yeah, and I definitely am. Man, I surely appreciate you coming on the show. I know you've given us the rightvision.com, but where else can our listeners find you at?
Yeah, the easiest place for them to go to. And again, if they want to go ahead and go directly to that link, they can do that. That's shapetherightvision.com. But if you say, you know what, Vernon, like I'm interested in your clothing brand, I'm interested in the 10 steps, I'm interested in the pro tips when you've been on different podcast appearances and all the different spaces that you're in, the easiest way is to go to my Linktree account. And that is linktr.ee/the right leader altogether. So one more time, linktr.ee/the right leader. And when you go to my Linktree account, you're going to see all of that. You're going to see the 10 steps link. You're going to see Zero Apology Zone. You're going to see pro tips. You're going to see Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. You're going to see everything where I am, almost everything. I got some other stuff in the hopper that I'm not quite ready to go ahead and release publicly yet, but I'm going to tell you it's good stuff. And that'll be on the Linktree as well in the future.
So I'll tell you what, man, when we write the article about this podcast, I will put your Linktree in there and people will be able to find you. We didn't even talk about your clothing. You have a clothing brand. You're writing a book. You own everybody's podcast who I listen to. You have I didn't even know you can do that you can put playlists of other people's podcasts. You don't even need your own because you own so many. Oh my God.
I'm going to tell you about that playlist idea because I don't take any credit for that. But one morning I was in, which I do every morning, spend a time of meditation and reflection and quiet time and then a time in the Word. And God gave me an idea. The Holy Spirit did. And he said, Vernon, take all of those podcasts you've been on, take all of the links, put together a playlist. And whatever that playlist is, whatever that website address is, that URL, take one of the domains that you own and point that domain to that playlist. And so I get a kick out of that. I give God the full credit for that. That was God's idea, not mine. He just gave it to me. And I said, you know what? I'll go ahead and I'll follow that out. So I need to go check on that today. I haven't checked on it today yet, but it's growing. The number of plays are,
man. I say, man, this dude, this is a lot. Hey, you know what? The good Lord gives good ideas. Let me put it like that.
As one of my mentors told me, he said, he asked this rhetorical question. He said, there are a lot of books that are out there, a lot of strategy books. And then he asked this question. He said, is there a better strategy than the Holy Spirit? And I was like, I don't think that there really is. And it's kind of funny that you said that because that reminds me of him. So yeah, I got that idea one morning. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go with it. And it has turned out to be like every single other idea that God has given me. It's turned out to be a phenomenal idea. And I'm just humbled. I'm humbled and I'm honored about all the people that are fans, the people that are followers, the people that say, you know what, Vernon, man, I've been so enriched and I've been so just elevated from your work. That's very humbling. And I'm immensely grateful for that. Let me say that because sometimes it's a little surreal because I have to remind myself that you're like people follow you. I told somebody the other day, I said, I had to remind myself that I have quite a few people on Twitter and a little bit on Instagram too. I have quite a few people and they're just waiting to see what I'm going to say. And that's a little humbling, but I have to remind myself of that because I just get busy in I get busy and just doing exactly what's on my shirts. I get busy with believing, studying, hustling, manifesting, and repeating. And I stopped to really think about that process.
Yeah. And that's a very good thing, man. And I appreciate you being a believer, someone who is focused and who has their seed in the right environment. That's inspiring to someone like myself as I go every day to make sure my seed is in the right place. So keep doing what you're doing. And I appreciate you coming on the show.
You know what? I'm going to tell you this is that the honor, the privilege, and the pleasure is all mine. You're doing great work. You're doing phenomenal work. You're just, what can I say other than Coach, you're the bomb. All right. And that was just a little joke, folks. Don't go to bomb.com. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because I don't want to be responsible for somebody says there's some crazy stuff that came on my computer or whatever. But I do want to say this, though. In all seriousness, you're an influencer, my man.
Thank you, sir.
You really are. And more than you probably even see yourself as being. And it's just an honor to be in your space and to learn from you and to learn with you, man. It really is. And I'm humbled by that.
Hey, well, thank you, man. Just keep that in mind. I might need a job reference one day.
I will tell you this, my man. If you list me, here's what I'm going to tell you. First of all, you don't even need to ask my permission. You can go ahead and list me. Okay. And then once you list me, I'm going to go ahead and ask you want me to tell the folks, because what I'm going to ask them at the end of the interview or the phone call reference is, I have one last question for you. And I know I did this one time and it just freaked a lady out. And she asked me, she said, yeah, sure, Mr. What's the one question you have? And this is a great place where you're going to laugh on this one, folks, because it was a little unorthodox. But I asked her, I said, the last question I have for you, ma'am, is simply, why have you not hired this person? And she was kind of taken back a little bit. And she, you know what? And she started kind of chuckling or laughing. But I said that, and that was a little bit of an attempt at humor. It's a pretty decent one, I think. But what it really was communicating was, what, ma'am, you've got a legit candidate before you. And if you don't take this candidate, I assure you, ma'am, someone else will. Somebody else will. Yeah, because what we experience in education is similar to what is experienced in other sectors. And I say it this way, as somebody who's been on the other side of that job fair table in so many different places and so many different venues over the years. When you're on the other side of that job fair table, when you're at a campus and you have vacancies to fill, you want the best talent. And it doesn't just mean people that have the best credentials or what have you on paper. We're looking for people that are legit people. I'm looking for people that know how to connect with kids. They know how to be the SEL that we think all educators should have and should be and should know about, but some don't. They should have that in addition to all the credentials and the other things. I say this to those folks that are out there. Having the right credentials is good. That's important. You need to have those things, obviously, for the different states, and particularly here in the state of Texas. But I will say this to you folks, talent and really legit good talent is part of what is and part of what makes someone a game changer. But again, if you want all of the steps to becoming a game changer, go to shapetherightvision.com, or you just simply go to the link tree the coach is going to put in the script.
And the article. Mr. Wright, surely appreciate you for coming on the show, my brother. And thank you again for coming on.
The pleasure, the honor, and the privilege is all mine. And I will tell you, folks, enjoy, be blessed, and what a blessing it is from me to you to be in your space and to learn from you.
It's time for Flip Tips, and today's Flip Tip is brought to you by my homegirl, Terry Porter, and her blog on medium.com entitled Your Flipboard Magazine Cover is a Front Door. The cover of your Flipboard magazine is a way into your content. So just like someone selling a home wants a pretty front door to encourage people to come inside of their house and look around, you want a compelling Flipboard magazine cover that will have people flipping your content. The cover is a focal point of your magazine, and just like the first 5 minutes of a good lesson, an engaging Flipboard magazine cover is your hook. You can read more about Terry's article on her blog on medium.com and flip also into our Flipboard EDU podcast magazine. Thanks, Terry.
Flipboard EDU podcast is a great resource for teachers, students, and administrators.
Flipboard fam, thanks for listening with me on this episode. I also would like to thank Vernon Wright for sharing his passion for leadership in the post-COVID-19 era. I want to thank Crystal Vanderboom and Aileen Lalore for the editorials on the Flipboard EDU Educators blog. I would also like to thank everyone at Flipboard for allowing me to create 50 episodes that are listened to in 17 countries. Thank you for creating a great tool for us all to use and collaborate with. Remember to subscribe to our Flipboard EDU magazine on flipboard.com. Follow our podcast on all major platforms and share our podcast with an educator or colleague. Our podcast is available globally and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Until next time, family.